All right, welcome everyone. It is noon 01 where I'm coming from. I know many of you are joining from around the globe. So welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining from. We're grateful to spend the next hour with you. My name is Luke Akins from Global Knowledge. I'm the AWS and Red Hat sales engineer at Global Knowledge, and pleased to have with us today two from Red Hat, Justin McSheehy, who's the training partner manager with Red Hat, and then John Walter, who will be presenting as a solutions architect today. He holds the highest certification that one can from Red Hat, knows more than most when it comes to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And so we're pleased to have these guys with us today. So Justin, John, great to have you here today. Thanks for spending the time with us. And John, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Awesome. Thanks, bud. Again, I'm John Walter. I am a solutions architect at Red Hat, been Red Hat coming up on 6 years now. It's kind of wild. So today we're going to be talking about how to get started with Red Hat Enterprise Linux. We'll talk a little bit about Red Hat's strategy, exactly where we fit into this whole kind of hybrid cloud model. We'll talk a little bit about from the customer's perspective, what they can expect, gearing up towards adoption of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. We'll also talk a little bit about how we actually build Red Hat Enterprise Linux. We'll talk about open source and how we work with the community to bring in new features to the platform to make sure everything is battle tested and ready, enterprise ready, for our customers. From there, we'll talk about obviously Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8, which is our most recent major release of our Linux platform. Came out, I want to say, coming up on 2 years now. It was at Red Hat Summit 2019, the last big Red Hat Summit event that we had in person. We'll also spend a little bit of time talking about ways that you can train depending on where you're starting with your skill level as far as Linux or your adoption of Red Hat Enterprise Linux specifically. And as Luke said, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A towards the end as well. I'll try to keep my eye out on the Q&A box, although sometimes it's tough to multitask with these. So if I see any come through that I can answer right in the moment, I will. Otherwise, like I said, we'll have plenty of time towards the end for Q&A. So let's start a little bit with some kind of housekeeping, laying the groundwork, talk a little bit about kind of what Red Hat's overall strategy is and where we see our products and tools fitting. So what you're seeing here is really where everything is moving, right? We're moving away from data centers. We're moving away from siloed development practices. This is all really in the efforts of DevOps adoption, digital transformation, whatever it is that you want to call it. And what you're seeing here is really a view of our solutions, different elements of our portfolio, all of which is focused on an open hybrid cloud. And really, RHEL serves as that connective tissue, right? It's meant to be deployed and behave the same way across physical and virtual and private and multiple public clouds. That's always the way that it's been. It's really giving our customers a common platform for traditional or modern or container-based and microservice constructed applications and hybrid, serving kind of the role as that new data center. And if hybrid cloud is something that is new to you, really the hybrid cloud is just combining your existing data center, your private cloud resources with ready-made IT infrastructure resources. So the compute, the networking, the storage, applications and services that are actually running. And all of this is meant to provide bursting and scaling capabilities that you're going to get from infrastructure as a service or from a public cloud offering. Our strategy is really to be the enterprise IT architecture where the same application works across an integrated IT environment. It's incorporating multiple private and public clouds, physical machines, virtual machines. And really the goal here is to strive for consistency and reliability, flexibility of the operating system. All of this is really determining how smooth the connections between the public and the private clouds are. If you use the same operating system to build your private cloud and use your private cloud and bind them into a public cloud or into a hybrid cloud, then your environments will become so interconnected that they'll really become immaterial, right? Users won't know or care where what their workloads are, where they're running. But in order to build a hybrid cloud like that, you have to start with the operating system. RHEL is that operating system. And so that's really kind of the three pillars of our business. And I know this is going to transition into a technical conversation, I promise, but I feel like it's important to kind of lay the groundwork as to what our strategy as far as our portfolio goes. Really is largely focused on the open hybrid cloud. So every product that we would talk about, even outside of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, right? OpenShift is really kind of, and Kubernetes and containerized deployments are really kind of the talk of the town right now. Automation, obviously, being able to manage these large systems across all these different environments. But this all really starts at the OS level, right? Everything that we're going to be talking about, whether it's Red Hat Enterprise Linux or any of the other products that we have, we need that OS at the infrastructure level to be elastic and malleable, and we need it to be something that is highly available and reliable and scalable across all of these different deployments and environments. So Linux is really the true core of everything that we're going to be talking about. If you're a developer, if you're an operations person, if you're on the DevSecOps side, ultimately what we need with the common theme across all these different teams is what everything is running on top of, which is in this case, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And so you can see here, those three different pillars broken down. Really, this is the top-down product view of everything that we offer, all of which is really supported and stood up on Red Hat Enterprise Linux. The idea here is that whether physical or virtual, in your own data center, on the public cloud, that the foundation for things like OpenShift and all of these application services, all of this is running on top of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So again, this is a view of our solutions, the different portfolio elements. It's all really bucketed into those three kind of pillars from our strategy, right? Obviously, they're in red, the hybrid cloud infrastructure, RHEL 8 being the core platform element. You have the cloud native development pieces, OpenShift being the core platform element there. And then you have the management layer, which is things like automation, subscription management, systems management, predictive analytics as far as Red Hat Insights goes. But again, all of this running at a base on top of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So, this is all well and good for your system administrators. Obviously, they're usually always the first ones that are really excited about RHEL adoption. But what about for developers, right? What about for operations teams? Developers want to be able to build innovative applications using the latest open source tools. And we'll talk a good bit about open source and kind of Red Hat's role in that. But with that bleeding edge technology comes a downside, right? Developers need to know that they can get support, that there's stability to reduce complexity with their actual applications. And the ops teams need to know that these tools are secure, right? They're not going to require major updates to get access to new languages or new frameworks. We need to have something that is able to kind of toe the line between the latest and greatest and something that's battle tested and geared towards the enterprise. So that's really where open source software plays, a really incredibly and increasingly strategic role for enterprises, right? Especially for access to innovation. And enterprise open source is meant to deliver that innovation while also providing the security and the support. Support being really one of the key features there that's required to run these systems in production. And so, one of the things that we talk about is being the fastest time to hello world. There's streamlined access to a lot of really high quality open source development tools. RHEL 8 specifically delivers more versions, more updates of supported and popular open source language frameworks and databases. We work with the upstream to identify really what's in vogue. What's the latest services that our customers are asking for, but as importantly, the community really drives that conversation. And so, if you're not really familiar with, open source development and how that works, one thing that may help to I guess set the stage, so to speak. Essentially, we have three channels as far as Linux goes. We have Fedora, which is the most bleeding edge it's an open source community. A lot of Red Hatters are contributors and active participants within that community. But then there's also folks from other vendors out there that are participating in that community. Even just people, hobbyists, fans of Linux, are working to build this latest and greatest bleeding edge version of Linux that we call Fedora. There's typically, I would say, a major version released every 2 to 3 months. We take that upstream version and we harden it. We make sure that it's secure and that there's support for different tooling. We take branches and commits from the upstream and figure out what is going to be best for our customers. And we take essentially Fedora and take only the best parts, and that's what we create as far as Red Hat Enterprise Linux goes. Now, the third stream there is what we call CentOS, and CentOS actually just underwent some pretty significant changes from a project standpoint. And so now CentOS, where it used to be essentially a clone of RHEL, is going to serve as essentially the beta channel for RHEL, where we're calling CentOS streams. And essentially there is going to be a middle ground offering between Fedora, which is going to be the latest and greatest bleeding edge, and RHEL, which is going to be the battle tested, tried, enterprise version of the OS. CentOS will sit there in the middle and essentially serve as the next minor release for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So right now we're on RHEL 8. I want to say we're on 8.3, although I should probably know that off the top of my head. And so essentially going forward, we'll release a new version of CentOS Stream version 8. That minor version that gets released with that will essentially serve as the next minor version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So really the idea here is, providing innovation where necessary. We want to make sure that we're providing the latest tools, that they're stable, that, that there's support for the different frameworks and languages that the developers need within those environments. We also want to make sure that we have increased agility and that we're reducing time to market with these platforms and with the applications that will be standing up on them. So what we hear from customers, customers are demanding better and differentiated and secure services, along with disruptive competitors changing the game, establishing essentially a new reality for enterprises today, which is essentially just to pivot quickly or die, right? Businesses aren't able to plan and make the same assumptions they did 5 years ago because the tools that they were using 5 years ago have either been deprecated, they don't exist anymore, or have been completely, radically changed in some way. Yesterday's IT approach to, offering business advantage, if that's what we want to call it, isn't really optimized for today's world where a lot of ambiguity exists, right? There's new security challenges that pop up every single day. There's plans are scrapped in favor of rapid iteration. Teams are being completely reorganized to move away from waterfall development towards DevSecOps or DevOps. And so in order to succeed, organizations are configuring their businesses for change without necessarily knowing what the change is going to be, right? And they do this by making cloud their default deployment choice with an eye on the hybrid or multi-cloud in the future. So they're looking to streamline their approach to infrastructure operations. They can buy it rather than build it, and taking a more API-driven approach to managing and scaling the complexity of this new IT paradigm. So this rapid failure and success approach relies on the open source. It relies on Linux. making it kind of the natural landing zone for these emerging workloads, like things like machine learning, predictive analytics, AI, 5G, edge computing, and as well as those existing enterprise applications already within these companies' organizations. And those organizations, they're seeking these capabilities to be service delivery ready in support of new business agility, right? They have to undergo this transition without adding complexity. And so in this state of IT optimization, organizations, they don't have the luxury of being able to give up anything to gain new functionality. They can't sacrifice existing capabilities they rely on to run those applications that are already driving business today in order to gain new capabilities that meet customer and market demands of the future. They have to do both, right? They have to do both in order to thrive and make sure their environment is secure and cost effective and responsive to today's known and tomorrow's unknown. And so one of the biggest challenges these organizations are facing in this transition for service delivery readiness is finding talent. That's really where my team comes into play, right? Linux and cloud skills, they're really seen as top talents that are sought by these IT hiring managers and recruiters, and 87% of those recruiters find it hard to find the right mix of experience and skills. So organizations, they can't simply rely on being able to find the people that are going to be able to manage their growing Linux and cloud and container environments, and a large number of Windows and Unix admins. They're being called on to learn these new skills. Before my time within the training and certification team, I actually worked frontline support for Red Hat Enterprise Linux services and security. And so I worked with customers all the time who would essentially open up their tickets saying, hey, I'm a 20-year Windows admin, and I've never felt so helpless and unknowledgeable in my entire life. And they're talking circles around me as far as some of the projects they worked on as Windows administrators. But of course, then their organization comes in, they see the value of adopting Red Hat Enterprise Linux as the future for their foundation, moving towards the hybrid cloud. But they didn't have the skill set internally already. And so as opposed to laying off their entire workforce and bringing in dozens of system administrators, which would obviously be time consuming and not all that fair to the existing teams, they were having to find consulting or training to upskill these folks. And so we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But as organizations grow and adopt new technologies, cultural headwinds and the growing number of different point solutions, it really exacerbates the growing complexity of the IT estate. And ultimately, customers want open source and organizations want open source, right? There is a huge desire for open source. This isn't news to us, but it does really solidify the legitimacy of our message and our goal, which is to promote open source as the technology across the IT industry. So I touched on this a little bit before, but I wanted to reiterate, what our community model looks like, right? We are working with the community to obviously build the bleeding edge next version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but we work significantly with our customers to continue to enhance our existing products. And so, I'll talk specifically about Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but the same can be said across our entire portfolio. But our engineering teams commit more feature enhancements than any other organization that I've been a part of. And that starts first with our frontline support teams. We have a 10-year life cycle on any major version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And so within that 10 years, we may release anywhere between 10 and 15 minor version updates. But between those minor version updates, we have several Z stream releases that are all really either bug fixes or feature enhancements that have been requested by our customers. And so, our frontline teams work with our product engineering business unit to understand what our customers are expecting. Sometimes that's a feature that exists upstream that isn't in a version of, let's say, a service that we ship. And so looking to backport a feature. And sometimes it's just bringing in a net new feature, maybe based on some other technology. And so our team works tirelessly to bring in those kind of requirements from our customers, to solicit as much information as possible. I don't know many companies that leave their Bugzillas completely open. But Red Hat is one of those companies where not only can customers create their own Bugzillas if they want to, but they can follow along with our software maintenance engineers and our product engineers in their discussion as far as how we can actually build out those new features or fix those bugs. We talked about the community involvement as well, but we also have a pretty strong relationship with our partners, Global Knowledge being one of the major partners that I work with from a day in, day out basis, and different vendors and the ISVs to solicit as much feedback as we can about the platform and bring that back. It really serve as a feedback loop, right? Upstream innovation, there's hardware technology vendors, there's customers usually being the most important feedback that we get. And here you can see just an overview of all of the different upstream projects and the interaction with Red Hat. So, we don't just do this for Linux, right? We're involved in dozens of communities that are building and refining the many different technologies that make up our portfolio. But notice that those communities, they tend not to work with each other. So Red Hat really serves as a conduit between communities so that we can later support products that interact successfully as well. We are the open source company, right? We're the largest open source company in the world. We support these open source products from the open source projects, and we give back to the projects and communities that we engage in. We defend open source licenses. We equip our customers with success by being able to help to inform the direction of those communities as well. Really, our mission is to be the catalyst in communities of customers and contributors and partners creating better technology the open source way. So that's laid the foundation as far as kind of what our messaging is, the importance of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Let's actually get into the nitty gritty of the technical pieces of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8. I mentioned at the top, this is our most recent major release of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It's been out for about just coming up on its second year anniversary in end of April. I want to say we released, I think, April 30th of 2019. And so, going back to what I was saying before, RHEL is the foundation for everything that we're doing right here. RHEL 8, it's the intelligent operating system. You'll hear that a lot. That is the consistent foundation for the enterprise hybrid cloud. It is the platform that helps us bring our strategy to life, the open hybrid cloud. And that's how customers are really progressing in that digital transformation journey. We believe only RHEL delivers the features and the functions that deliver the true value in that digital transformation journey. And so some of the new capabilities within RHEL 8 are really meant to afford higher level of efficiencies for today's IT organizations. One of the things that we offer as part of Red Hat Enterprise Linux is Red Hat Insights. I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier on, but this is a predictive analytics tool that comes with every Red Hat Enterprise Linux subscription, and it's meant to help IT teams to proactively identify and remediate threats, whether they be security or performance or availability or stability, all meant to avoid any kind of issues or outages or unplanned downtime, all meant to really ensure that your environment is running optimally. And there's no other Linux provider that offers this proactive and automated and targeted resolution as a tool as part of their offering. Image Builder, another really big feature that was introduced in RHEL 8 here. For any virtual environment, the creation and management of images and golden images is a big operational concern. I've had many conversations with customers about this. A lot of end users, they want better control over, what packages are installed, than just starting with a vendor supplied image, right? We provide an ISO for RHEL, whatever major and minor version you're looking for on a bunch of different architectures. But the vanilla install may come with a bunch of services that you don't need, or maybe doesn't come with services that you do need. And so, what you're looking for with any kind of golden image is consistency across different deployment footprints, right? You're looking to ensure some kind of level of security and operational excellence and application support. And so Image Builder is a tool that allows you to build images from our source RPMs, which we provide, that are deployable to multiple targets quickly and simply. So you can see here in the image there, Image Builder, you create this blueprint that can be deployed on bare metal or on your Rev hypervisor or on VMware, or as importantly to the public or private cloud. And so it provides a really fine-grained control and visibility into what's included in a particular image. You can also get historical data on where it's been deployed, how many times, things like that. And so this is all about creating immutable images. I won't talk about it much throughout this presentation, but more and more over the coming weeks and months and years, you're going to hear more about immutable infrastructure. That is what we're striving for. And so Image Builder, it allows customers to manage the life cycle of their image catalogs independently of the release of new packages. We also have a lot of support for different enterprise applications, whether it be SAP or Microsoft. They're really key strategic ISV partners that work with us on RHEL 8. And so, something like SAP HANA workloads for big data and in-memory databasing ties in perfectly well with RHEL and ties with our cluster high availability offering as well. So you can ensure that those SAP workloads are always available. And then a lot of support with Microsoft as far as not just providing access to SQL Server or something like that, but also integrating and deploying RHEL VMs onto something like Azure. This is a bit of trivia that I heard, and I actually couldn't believe it, but apparently the most OS, how do I phrase this? It's not the majority, but the OS with the largest footprint deployed on Azure is Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which just blows my mind. So, they're a huge strategic partner of ours, and they're a trusted partner along with Oracle, right? Oracle usually seen as sort of our biggest rival, but they're a huge partner of ours as far as providing support for different services that Oracle provides, and PostgreSQL and machine learning workloads. RHEL is really optimized to support those critical database workloads, as well as support for leading ISV applications and workloads too. And then finally, security. Security is obviously paramount. When I joined Red Hat, security, quite honestly, wasn't as much of a priority for RHEL, or for Red Hat, I should say, as a company, as it is today. And as as my career has progressed at Red Hat, I've seen more and more that security is becoming really at the forefront of every decision we make. I think it was something that for at least a while before my time at Red Hat, security was really seen as sort of something that the customer takes care of, right? And so we were leveraging third parties, and now there's way more emphasis on security with what we ship. Obviously, there's always room for third party tooling, whether it be security or not. But we provide a lot as far as things like system-wide crypto policies, right? Manual selection and configuration of cryptographic algorithms that can exist across multiple applications. That can be really, really time consuming. And so we have made it really, really easy to create those system-wide crypto policies that allow your admins to really set the acceptable algorithms across multiple sources, right? So things like OpenSSL, Coreos, all being able to do that with a single configuration file. So, applications that are using those sources, things like Apache, HTTPD, they'll be able to automatically use the appropriate cryptographic packages with some additional configuration. and so really, again, this is all meant to, this is a wide array of new features and capabilities. It significantly adds value to the subscription in a couple of ways. One, insights being included in every subscription is really, really big. It'll help your teams to identify and remediate those threats to not just security again, but to configuration issues as well. All of that data comes from our support delivery team. And so we work really tirelessly to continue to add data to insights so that your teams can feel safe and secure with your workloads. Also, with the release of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8, we're moving towards a more predictive and predictable cadence of releases. When I joined Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 had just released. In fact, I think while I was interviewing, was the transition essentially between RHEL 6 and RHEL 7. And if you look at the versioning, if you look at even just the release dates of the minor versions, there really was never a rhyme or reason to it. And that really caused a lot of issues with our customers because they did not have a predictable release cycle that they could rely on. And so they couldn't plan downtime to actually migrate to the newest minor version or update to the newest minor version or migrate to the newest major version. And so with RHEL 8, we've also committed to a specific release cadence. Every 6 months, we'll release a new minor release. So you can expect, I believe 8.4 will be releasing somewhat soon, and 6 months after that, 8.5. But on top of that, we've also committed to a 3-year major release cycle. And so especially our customers that are not capable of really being at the bleeding edge. So, specifically I'm thinking of, our government and public sector customers. They have a reliable release cadence that they can plan and target because especially when you look at the public sector, they typically need months or potentially years to certify a new version of an operating system before they can actually deploy it. And so, that's something where, we know that our customers are trying to seek a balance between, access to the latest technologies and frameworks and programming language while also having stable releases. And so we hope that, being able to proactively plan with our customers for maintenance and application refreshes, that's only going to be a good thing. And so, really, we want to help you to grow your business. And RHEL starts really as the foundation. It opens the doors for a lot of other technologies. Red Hat Enterprise Linux is going to serve as the foundation for a lot of your workloads. But as you start to scale those workloads, you'll want to start looking at things like containers or automation. And so, we mentioned before the support and partnerships with all the leading cloud providers and all these different ISVs. Microsoft is developing a new version of SQL Server, especially for RHEL 8. I think that's actually just come out within the last couple of months. But RHEL 8 also provides support for support and management of different containers, right? So if you're familiar with Docker, Podman is a very similar technology. In fact, from a command structure, all of the same commands that you would run against Docker containers, you can do the same thing with Podman. In fact, I just go through and just alias Docker to Podman so I can still use Docker. That's what I'm used to. But essentially, we are now including as part of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 3 community-driven tools around container technology. So those are Podman, which is essentially the way that you can actually create containers, building container images, and then Scopio, which is a way of actually managing those images. And so these are 3 tools that come as part of Red Hat Enterprise Linux subscription. Really, this is a great way for organizations who are sort of on the journey towards containerized workloads that don't need something full-fledged like a Kubernetes engine. They don't need a container platform yet, something like OpenShift. This is a way to really dip your toe in containerized workloads. A lot of our customers will essentially target a single application and containerize that and run that locally on, a system or a few RHEL systems and see, how it is managing that. Obviously, container platforms provide a lot of features that once you begin to scale, you really make it impossible to manage on just the base OS. But this is a fantastic way of having kernel isolated containerized applications running on your systems locally. And then a couple more big things here, new deployment features. We've introduced something called application streams that allows developers to choose specifically what versions of languages or frameworks that they want to work with. And so you no longer need to have two systems spun up, one on say Python 2.5 and one on Python 3.2, right? You now can essentially have both and choose which stream that you want to be working with. So now developers have freedom of choice. They have flexibility within the same environment. They don't have to spin up all these other dev environments to work on different versions of the same application. All right, next slide. Just a quick kind of view of some of the customers that we work with. Obviously a lot of private sector companies, a lot of government agencies. Their adoption and commitment to RHEL has been really, really big. So let's talk a little bit about the ecosystem as well. I know I've talked about insights already, but essentially, this was previously a product that was an add-on subscription. And so I know I've talked about this a bit already, so I won't spend too much time on this slide, but really it goes beyond adding new features. We're looking to, you'll hear with Red Hatters, we're always talking about the value of the subscription, right? Unlike other companies who require licensing for their OS or whatever, we provide a subscription, and that subscription gives you access to, let's say you buy one Red Hat Enterprise Linux subscription, well, you get access to every available version that's still supported under our life cycle. So right now, if you bought one RHEL subscription, you'd actually get access to every version of RHEL 6, 7, and 8. In fact, you may actually still get access to 5, although I should say that's way out of support, so don't download that. And so especially when you have multiple environments, you have multiple versions of the platform running across that environment, you need a unified tool that allows you to see into each of these environments. And so, Insights is something that pairs really well with something like Red Hat Satellite, which is more for systems management, creating content views and managing the lifecycle of these systems. Well, Insights allows you to see into those systems and understand, hey, these ports are open for this service, and that's a non-standard port. It may just be informational, it may be intentional, but it may not be. And so, that's something where instead of having to, pay a vendor for a security scanner or something like that, we provide that for you. Let's see, where are we time-wise? Looks like we're still good. The next thing I wanted to mention is the universal base image. So, a lot of customers ask me, how do I get started with Red Hat Enterprise Linux without purchasing a subscription? And we have a couple different ways that you can. Developers.redhat.com actually provides access to I want to say it's up to 8 individual RHEL systems, essentially. This is a non-supported offering. Or I should say a self-supported offering. So you do get access to like our knowledge base, but the universal base image is a way of essentially creating containerized version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. This is really serving as the basis for a lot of really interesting workloads that we're working with. And so, if you haven't gotten to work with containers before, what we're providing is a lightweight version of the OS. And so you can use this really to serve as a foundation for different workloads. You could create a golden image from your custom application you deployed onto the universal base image. You create a golden image of that you then propagate throughout your environment, throughout your organization. And then Coreos is a variant of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which really serves as the basis of OpenShift. I talked before about how Red Hat Enterprise Linux serves as the platform, as the foundation for pretty much everything else that we talk about. What Coreos is essentially a variant of RHEL that's optimized for containerized workloads. Essentially, it is connected to OpenShift so that instead of having to manage your infrastructure OS and then the platform on top of it and then the workloads on top of it, it essentially bundles OpenShift with Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So you're only having to manage one platform. This I know is probably kind of a niche use case, or at least those that are already on the journey towards OpenShift or containerized workloads. CoreOS is only available as part of Red Hat OpenShift. And then I'm glad I did have a slide in here. I did want to make sure that this is here, but developers.redhat.com, the Red Hat developer program provides you access, full download access and documentation to several of our products. Now, the idea here is that these are not running in production, or if they are, it's a very small production workload, because again, you're only getting self-support. But for those that are interested in, say, application development and they would like a test environment, a RHEL test environment, or if you're just new to Linux and you'd like to get started with our variant of Linux in a test environment, developers.redhat.com, the developer program, will provide you with that full download access to RHEL 8. And you'll get access. It's a full version of the OS. You'll get access to all the features that we talked about before. And it has a bunch of runtime languages and compilers and databases and web and cache servers, all available to you as part of that. And there's a how-to guide that's in there that helps you to get started really easy. And so I highly encourage you, if you're just getting started with Linux, we'll talk about training and how to learn to be a system administrator in the kind of workloads. We'll talk about it a little bit later on, but obviously if you want to, my first exercise working with Red Hat Enterprise Linux was I created a Plex server, right? I created a media server that was highly available. So that was sort of my first project before coming to Red Hat to sort of test my merits and speak to it in my interview. And so, there are a lot of projects available. If you go to even the Red Hat subreddit, there's a lot of really cool and interesting projects people work on, and you can do that easily with your developer subscription. I won't spend too much time on this. I talked about this a little bit before, but Linux is really the foundation of containerized or containers themselves. What's inside of a container is Linux, and what's sitting underneath the container is Linux, right? And so if you've been to any conferences, I guess not within the last year, but previous to Corona, you may have seen Red Hatters wearing containers are Linux t-shirts. And so, containers are fundamentally a new way to address existing Linux kernel capabilities, and the kernel really just being kind of the heart of Linux. And so there are a lot of capabilities that the kernel provides to the operating system that containers also need. So things like security, things like isolation, things like control groups, or I guess those are the big ones. And so those are all things that the kernel provides to Linux, and those things also exist within containers themselves. And so, as you progress, as you become comfortable working with Linux and you want to start working with containers, well, it's still the same skill set, right? The way that you have namespace isolation, or the way that you secure the platform of RHEL, those same skills apply to the containers themselves. Really, containers are isolated operating systems running on top of another operating system that may be running on top of a hypervisor on the cloud, whatever. We talked a little bit about some of these tools, but what we're shipping now as far as container tools and empowering the adoption of containerized workloads are those three tools that you see on the left side. So Podman, Builda, and Scopio. This is how you find, run, and build containers. We offer access to dozens, if not hundreds, of different container images, which are essentially just services. So if you wanted, to spin up a Apache web server, there's a container image for it. once you bring it down and start it up on your Linux system, you're able to essentially enter into the container image and create your index .html file and all the different things you need for your web server. And all of that is running in isolation on top of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So those are all tools that now are provided as part of RHEL. And then as you start to grow, as you start to grow your container footprint, you would start to look more towards something like Red Hat OpenShift, which is running on Kubernetes. But as part of Podman, which is what is provided with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, it's really designed to build and run and manage containers without the need of a daemon from the command line, and really at a small scale. RHEL is providing agility. It reduces the time to market for these different workloads. And as workloads move more towards containerized workloads away from those monolithic applications, having daemonless applications running, it improves security. It improves the ability to trace what's happening between different applications, right? There are standards in place for these containerized images as well. And so you can have full container management, hundreds of thousands of containers running on one system, and they're designed to work with orchestration systems as well. So I know we're coming up towards the top of the hour. We're going to transition a little bit into discussing training, and then we'll have time to answer any questions that are in the chat. We do offer multiple ways to train. If you're not familiar with Red Hat training, this is all hands-on focused learning, right? So we offer the curriculum itself in a few different ways. Obviously, we're not really doing in-person training right now, but we do offer virtual training in both a public and a private setting. So if you and your organization are looking to go through one of our courses, you want to keep it just to your team with the instructor, we do offer virtual training essentially through a Zoom session. We provide you with every student with a lab environment to actually work through, and then all of the course is really lab focused. So you'll go through a lecture portion around how to create users in RHEL, and then you'll have an exercise where you're actually going through and creating users in RHEL. We can do the same thing publicly. Luke and his team at GK can help you to see what that public calendar is looking like, but essentially we just run sessions for all of our courses. Our more popular courses obviously will run more often than others. And so essentially especially I should say our foundational Linux courses are running frequently. And so if it's just you or maybe you and a couple other people on your team that want to go through one of our instructor-led trainings, we do have that in a public variety. We also offer all of this training in a self-paced manner. Obviously, sometimes it's tough to justify getting out of your day job for 3 or 4 day training session. And so we do offer the ability to get access to one of our courses for a 90-day time period. Again, we still provide you a lab that you can work within. The content is the same. We offer that in either essentially what we call Red Hat Online Learning, which is a kind of textbook-based version. It's a lot of reading through the textbook. There may be some code blocks and a couple videos throughout that. Or we have a video classroom offering where we've actually taken one of our instructors and had them deliver the course on camera as though they were delivering it to you in person. And so, depending on your learning style, you get 90 days access to either one of those modalities. And then we also offer this in a self-paced fashion for a year-long access where you actually get access to our entire course portfolio. So, if you're interested in more than one course, if you're interested in taking your time, 90 days isn't going to be enough time, or you anticipate that once you take one course that you're going to want to take a few more, our Red Hat Learning subscription is definitely, I guess what you'd say, the best bang for your buck. And definitely provides a lot of flexibility as far as learning on your own time and getting access to a whole lot of training. We've got about 63, 64 courses in our portfolio right now that many of them are Red Hat Enterprise Linux at the foundation or the intermediate or advanced level, depending on where you're starting and where you want to end up. We also offer certification, and so obviously depending on the industry that you're working in, sometimes certification is a big, big benefit to, whether you're working with customers or something like that. Previously you had to either take one of our exams in a classroom after you took the course or at one of our testing facilities across the world. With COVID, obviously, all or most of those locations had shut down. And so back in August, I want to say, we actually launched the ability to take these exams remotely. So again, this is something where, for the most part, most of our courses are going to have an associated certification exam. Again, this is a hands-on exam, much like our courses, where when you log into the exam environment, you're going to be given several things that you have to configure within the system, and then you'll have 3 hours, 4 hours to go through and do all the different things that the exam is asking you to do. So those are proctored, and so there are some kind of technical requirements. You need an external webcam as well as one built into probably your laptop. And so we proctor that, but you can do that from the comfort of your own home, or if you want to, you can wait until one of the testing facilities in your area opens back up. And the last thing, I did want to cover a couple of the courses that we that I would recommend for those starting with Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Our Red Hat System Administration 1 and 2 courses are really designed to teach all of the core fundamental tasks that you'll be expected to know as a Linux system administrator. So, that's going to include things like user and group creation and management, configuring storage, networking, file systems, understanding security, tuning system performance. How do I manage the packages, the software that's on these different systems? How do I control services starting or who has access to them? How do I control the boot process? All of these different things are really kind of core fundamental system administration tasks. Analyzing and storing logs, right? How do I find help? How do I troubleshoot these systems? These are all different things that are really seen as the most fundamental and foundational skills that a system administrator needs to have. Now, will all of these different things apply to what your day job is going to be? Maybe not. But I can tell you from personal experience, my first 4 weeks working at Red Hat was going through and becoming certified in system administration, becoming a certified system administrator, and then a certified system engineer. All of those skills may not, you may not be responsible for the storage piece, but understanding how to troubleshoot a storage issue is as important, maybe even more important than knowing how to actually configure storage. So, a lot of the skills that we teach are going to be especially helpful down the road. As your comfortability with the platform grows, so too will some of the complexity of the things that you're doing. And we want to make sure that you're equipped to deal with any kind of issues that you encounter along the way. And then the final thing that I'll touch on before we move into the Q&A is Ansible, which I didn't really spend much time talking about, but obviously automation is a big part of the industry and the direction that we're moving. We want to make sure that we teach you how to manually configure and troubleshoot and manage these systems, but we also want to teach you how to automate a lot of those tasks, right? Any system administrator worth their weight is not going through and manually doing the same process over and over again. They're using some kind of automation tool, and Ansible is Red Hat's automation tool. The big kind of value of Ansible is that it's capable of automating tasks across multiple environments. And in fact, I think Luke, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the next webinar that we're going to be doing is all about Ansible. So I encourage you, if you're interested in automation, for the next to attend our next session, because we'll be talking all about some of the things that you can automate with Ansible. Oh, hey, I do have one more slide. If you are not new to RHEL, but you are new to RHEL 8, we do have a course that's just for people that are experienced system administrators with RHEL that just want to know what these core changes are. So things like the container tools we talked about, some of the updates to our package manager, some of the updates to the storage tools and networking tools that we ship and provide as part of RHEL as well. So again, this is an audience more for experienced RHEL administrators, but that have not made the transition yet to RHEL 8. So with that, I know that we're coming up to the top of the hour. let's get into the Q&A. Let's see. The first question I have is, are there any concerns about internet blackouts, security, and reliability of cloud-based storage and applications in regards to voice over IP and real-time applications and protocols? So that's a really good question. I wouldn't say that there are any concerns or any more concerns using something like Red Hat Enterprise Linux versus another platform. We strive for 99.99% uptime, and that's, largely we succeed there. As these workloads move more towards the edge, there's a huge importance around high availability. And that's partly why customers are moving towards a multi-hybrid cloud, right? They want to make sure that everything is not reliant on a single data center, right? It's easy, or even everything reliant on just, AWS, for instance, right? AWS obviously has a pretty immaculate track record as far as availability, although I want to say maybe in the last 18 months, I think there was like an unexpected, maybe 20-minute outage with Amazon, which is just unheard of, right? And so that's really kind of demonstrates in and of itself the value of the hybrid cloud. With the majority of your workloads running on any public cloud, you want to make sure that you have some kind of failover locally as well. Another question is, we see increased cost of putting storage and application servers in the cloud. Do you see a pendulum effect where organizations eventually begin to bring application storage back in-house? For your older ITs, administrators, I reference IBM outsourcing in the early 2000s that proved to be disastrous. So that's another really good question. And I think it really is going to depend on the workloads themselves, or maybe even in the industry, right? You'll find that, in the public sector, they are obviously always kind of a step behind anyway for kind of obvious reasons. They want to make sure that they have like the most tried and trusted version of whatever platform or product that they're deploying. But they also have a lot of need for, isolated systems. And, so you're going to continue to see, them really rely on localized data centers. They're probably behind, on the other side of a firewall that doesn't have any kind of, external connections. I think you're seeing a lot more, move towards ephemeral storage and immutable infrastructure. And so the idea here is that, as we create high availability for these systems, we also have to create high availability for these applications and for the storage underlying or networking or whatever. That's a problem that I think is really easily solved with something like OpenShift or containerized workloads, because instead of having 20 application servers, you might have 10,000 containers running that same application. And so I think that's a big change in the industry. And I know that that's not going to be the end all be all, right? It's a trend. It's a style, right? Microservice architectures is a big thing that we talk about, and that's a style. But styles go out of style, right? And so we're going to see eventually something come and replace it. I see a couple other things in the chat here. Let me run through here real quick and see if I can. Some are. It looks like actually, Luke, you were able to answer those. So I don't see any other questions in the Q&A. So I guess this is probably perfect timing to wrap up. Luke, if you wanted to go through this real quick.
Yeah, if you don't mind going to the next slide, John.
No problem.
We will, I appreciate you taking the time. Lots of helpful information here. As John mentioned, April the 13th, he'll be back with us, helping us understand Ansible to a larger degree. So make sure you sign up for that. And if you don't mind, go to globalknowledge.com. The classes that John mentioned, we have those available on the public schedule, and we'd be happy to get you into any Red Hat course that you're looking to take. We partner very closely with Red Hat, and be great to have you come and take a course. And then finally, check out globalknowledge.com. Lots of different case studies, webinars, white pages, lots of content to take a look at. So John, Justin, thanks for being with us, and thank you all for attending. We greatly appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.